The soft amber light of the seat belt sign flickered above, casting a gentle glow through the dimly lit cabin. The steady hum of the engines filled the air, rhythmic and almost soothing, as passengers settled in for the long journey ahead. Some adjusted their seats, some reached for headphones or opened their books, while others scrolled through their phones, hoping to pass the hours quietly. Near the window in seat 13F sat a woman who looked as ordinary as anyone else on board. She appeared to be in her late 30s, her dark hair tied loosely at the back, with a pair of plain aviator sunglasses resting on her head. Dressed in casual jeans and a soft gray hoodie, she blended in effortlessly. A small leather bag was tucked neatly under the seat in front of her, the only luggage she carried. No one gave her a second glance, and that was exactly how she preferred it. The flight had climbed smoothly above the clouds when the captain's calm but slightly tense voice crackled over the intercom, advising everyone to remain seated as they might encounter a bit of turbulence. It sounded routine, but to an experienced ear, there was something restrained in his tone, too measured, too careful. The woman in 13F lifted her gaze from the paperback she had been pretending to read and looked out the window. The sky seemed calm, the clouds harmless and bright, yet a faint unease stirred within her. Years of training, of flying through combat zones and unpredictable skies, had sharpened her instincts. Something was wrong. 15 minutes later, her instincts were proven right. The seat belt light blinked again, followed by a strange vibration and then a deep rumble, one that didn't match the rhythm of their engines. Several passengers turned toward the windows, murmuring in confusion. Then the shapes appeared, two fast-moving silhouettes slicing through the thin layer of clouds. Sleek, dark, and unmistakable. F-22 Raptors. Gasps erupted across the cabin as the jets drew nearer, leveling off alongside the airliner. A small girl pressed her face against the window, pointing with excitement. "Mom, look, fighter jets!" she exclaimed. A man a few rows ahead frowned and muttered under his breath, bewildered by what he saw. The jets remained perfectly aligned with the wings, their presence both awe-inspiring and unsettling. The captain's voice returned, softer this time, urging everyone to stay calm and assuring them that everything was under control. The woman in 13F didn't move. Her posture stayed composed, her expression unreadable. Yet her eyes stayed locked on the Raptors outside, her mind piecing together possibilities faster than anyone else could imagine. Then she caught the faint transmission through the cockpit speaker, a few words barely audible to those seated up front but clear enough for her trained ears to catch. The captain's voice was speaking to the control tower. "Tower, confirm passenger manifest. Is Falcon 1 on board?" Her fingers clenched slightly on the armrest. Falcon 1. It had been years since anyone had called her that. Years since she'd worn the uniform that bore that name. She inhaled slowly, her heart steady but heavy with memory. Outside, the lead Raptor tilted slightly, catching the sunlight on its canopy. Then came another transmission, this one from the F-22 pilot. "Raptor lead to civilian flight 207. Confirm Falcon 1 seated in 13F. There was a brief pause before the captain answered, his voice firm but filled with a quiet respect. "Affirmative. She's here." The next moment felt surreal. The two fighter jets edged even closer, and then, in perfect unison, both pilots raised their gloved hands in a solemn salute, directed not at the airliner but at the woman seated quietly inside. The passengers were stunned. Whispers spread through the rows, people twisting in their seats to see who was in 13F. Her face stayed calm, her lips curling into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. For the first time, someone beside her spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" She didn't look at him. "Not yet," she murmured softly. Hours earlier, at the airport, she had moved like a shadow through the terminal. No luggage to slow her down, no uniform to mark her past. Her boarding pass read E. Carter, a name that meant nothing to anyone who saw it. She had chosen it carefully. This trip wasn't about her, it was about honoring a promise made long ago, one that time hadn't erased. The man she was going to remember had once been her wingman, a fellow pilot who hadn't made it back from a mission that went wrong. She had saved him once, years before that final flight, and his last words to her had been a promise of return. She had come now to keep her side of that promise. As the airliner continued through restricted airspace, the F-22s stayed close, silent guardians flanking them. The passengers could only speculate. Some whispered about secret agents, others thought of politicians or hidden royalty. Whatever they imagined, none came close to the truth. After nearly 30 minutes, the raptors dipped their wings in farewell before veering away into the distance, leaving behind a trail of awe and silence. The woman finally relaxed, a soft sigh escaping her lips. She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn photograph folded neatly over the years. The edges were frayed, the colors faded by sun and time. 4 pilots stood on a desert runway in their flight suits, grinning at the camera, the heat shimmering behind them. She was among them, arms crossed, helmet tucked beneath her arm. Above her name patch, stenciled in bold black letters, was her old call sign, Falcon 1. The memory washed over her like a wave. She remembered the chaos of that mission, the desperate radio calls, the smell of burning fuel, the sound of gunfire in the distance. She had gone back for them when no one else could. She had taken a hit, limped her aircraft through hostile skies, and somehow made it home. That day had changed her life forever, but outside their circle, no one had ever known. By the time Flight 207 landed, the whispers had already spread beyond the cabin. Word traveled fast, too fast. On the tarmac, several airport personnel stood waiting, their faces solemn. Some saluted as she stepped off the jet bridge, while others simply placed hands over their hearts, sensing they were in the presence of someone extraordinary. 2 young Air Force officers stood at attention. One of them, his voice steady but emotional, spoke softly. "Ma'am, it's an honor. My father flew with you. You saved his life." She returned the salute without a word, her expression respectful but distant, then turned and walked toward the terminal, fading into the crowd like a ghost returning to obscurity. That evening, in a quiet town far from the city lights, she stood alone at the edge of a candlelit field. The air was still, the horizon painted with the orange and violet hues of sunset. Around her, a small group of people gathered in silence, each holding a candle, the soft glow flickering in the twilight. No one there called her by her alias. They knew her only by the name she had earned, Falcon 1. She didn't speak much, she didn't need to. The silence carried its own weight, filled with memories of those who never came home. As the ceremony came to an end, she looked up at the darkening sky. Somewhere far above, faint but distinct, she heard the low rumble of jet engines cutting through the clouds. It was a sound she would always recognize. A faint smile touched her lips as she lifted her gaze, her eyes glimmering with pride and sorrow intertwined. For all she had given, she had never sought glory or reward. She had done it for those who couldn't return, for the promise that bound them together across time and sky. As the last candles flickered out and the night deepened around her, she whispered a silent goodbye to the stars above, knowing that somewhere, her fallen friends were flying still. If this story moved your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.